Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Trep Talks. This is the show where I interview successful e-commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders, and ask them questions about their business story, and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today I'm really excited to welcome Adam Klosowiak to the show. Adam is the co-founder and CEO of KLOS Guitars. KLOS Guitars builds durable, portable, and great-sounding sleek carbon fiber guitars and ukuleles. And today I'm going to ask Adam a few questions about his entrepreneurial journey and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. So thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks. Really appreciate it, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I did a little bit of research on you, and I think you have an interesting story. I think you were studying engineering, and then somehow you fell into entrepreneurship. Can you share a little bit about, what made you start this business? How did you get the idea, and how did you get into entrepreneurship?
Of course, yeah. So I was studying electrical engineering at Princeton, and I found electrical engineering there to be quite theoretical. It was very interesting, and I loved the degree, but all my classmates and I consistently felt like we couldn't actually build anything. We were very good at theoretical physics and engineering, but we weren't very good at actually building, useful things, which when you think engineering, you often think practical and tangible devices and such. And so I got into a hackathon with two friends where we were supposed to design something in 24 hours and then present it. And we built this power strip that you could control via Bluetooth from your phone in 24 hours. And we actually ended up winning the hackathon. And the prize was a summer accelerator where you were to try to launch the product that you built. And that was the first time so we ended up not taking the accelerator because it had a caveat where you had to take off your senior year of college, and we didn't want to do that. But the process of evaluating if we were going to accept the accelerator, we did all the market research, competitor analysis, cost analysis. And I actually thought that process of analyzing a product and building a product was far more interesting than what I was studying in my degree. And that kind of got me interested in entrepreneurship at the very beginning. And so I then took a class at Princeton in entrepreneurship. And around the same time, my brother was studying mechanical engineering at Brigham Young University. And he's always been really good at making things and designing things. And so he was combining his interests in guitar and carbon fiber at the same time. And he built a carbon fiber guitar for one of his classes. And he needed help entering the idea into a business competition. And so I kind of paired my experience with what he built into this competition, and we won $1,000. And that was the very first guitar.
Wow. So did you actually end up finishing your engineering degree, or did you say, this is not really helping me, I want to now build this business?
No, I did. Yeah. So all this happened my senior year, my second semester. So right at the end of college is when that guitar competition, or the competition, happened where we built that guitar. And we ended up winning a summer accelerator from Princeton for the guitar company. And we did that the summer right after I graduated. And that's exactly, I graduated, I drove home with all my stuff. And then 3 days later, I came back to campus to start that.
Cool. So this idea for KLOS Guitars is really, I would say, your brothers, and you're kind of the business mind to take that. So he's kind of like the product person, product manager, and you're the business person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the very first guitar was his idea, and since then we've launched many more products. But yeah, that very first one, Ian had been working on it, and Ian actually was teaching me guitar for several years already on Skype, because we're brothers, and so we already had a good relationship, and he was my guitar instructor. So it's kind of funny that we ended up making a guitar business together.
So, did your brother or you, when you started getting onto the business side of this business, like, how did you know that this, one guitar that he had created, this idea of creating a guitar? I'm assuming the value proposition is really the material. What is the value proposition? Is it the carbon fiber material or?
Right. Yeah. So around the same time, I forgot to mention this, but around the same time that my brother was making this carbon fiber guitar, the guitar that I actually bought from him that I was using to learn on, it had cracked during the winter. And there was a big crack going from the bridge to the end of the guitar. And that was one of the influences that my brother had on building his guitar. And you hit it exactly right. The value proposition of carbon fiber for many industries, but specifically guitar, is that it's much more durable and resistant to temperature and humidity changes than wood. And it's much lighter than strong alternatives. Carbon fiber has taken over so many industries recently, road bikes to then mountain bikes to then hockey sticks, golf clubs, car parts, airplane parts. So many things incorporate carbon fiber that people don't even know. Tennis rackets, racquetball. And it's just kind of entered, there have been carbon fiber instruments made since the 80s, but it's always been an extremely niche and extremely expensive material to use for instruments. And what we were trying to do is try to make it a little more mainstream. And so we were trying to design a product that incorporated at first just some parts out of carbon fiber. So our first guitar was half wood, half carbon. And we wanted to make it a price point that was more mainstream. And that's always been sort of a mission that we've had, was to make actual affordable instruments that people who travel and use them and generally might not have a high budget can afford them. And that's why we chose the half carbon, half wood route initially.
And so, to go back to the question that I was going to ask initially, so is that something that the research, you had already done the market research, or your brother had done the market research and identified kind of like this gap that, the people, musicians who are traveling or who travel a lot more, and their guitars or these musical instruments are more prone to breaking. So this guitar, half wood, half carbon fiber, it's going to fit them well. Like, was there any sort of market research, or was it more like intuitive that my guitar broke, so this is the solution for me?
Yeah.
Other people can also use it.
Right. It was a combination of it's kind of an educated approach and an educated guess, I would say. Again, we were both engineers, so we actually knew very little about business. We didn't know what the words marketing meant. We didn't know what supply chain was. We were extremely ignorant at the time. But this was the logic. The logic was that there were several carbon fiber brands out there, but they were all really expensive. Like $1,500 was the minimum, but that was just one brand. And for the most part, it was $2,500 plus. And so we knew there was proof of concept and there was demand at that price point. And then we also knew that travel guitars were in high demand, made out of wood at a lower price point. And so the hypothesis was that if we could be the first to fill the gap of, it's a great material, but there's just nothing at the lower price range. So it was a very niche gap, a good product with a good material, but not available at that price point. That's the gap that we were trying to fill. And although it was a small gap, it was a gap. And that is, I think, a huge part of why we saw early success, because we targeted a very specific problem and we solved a very specific problem. And for a while, we were the only ones who solved it. And so we that carried us into the first few years of our business. And I think the logic there and the takeaway there is when people are designing something and making something, even if it's a small gap, but if it's a big enough problem and you make a specific enough solution, you know, it can get you your first several thousand customers.
Cool. I don't know music, so I'm curious. Like, does the material affect the acoustics of, you know, when somebody is playing? Like, does it actually change the quality of music or something, or that's not really a consideration in this?
Yeah, it's a great question. We get that question a lot. The thing to keep in mind is that there are, you know, hundreds of different types of woods out there. And so a lot of people will ask, you know, well, how does carbon fiber sound compared to wood? And it's so difficult to summarize wood by just saying wood. You know, like an African cherry will sound different than a spruce or ash or alder or, you know, mahogany. So what I would say is the difference, you can tell a difference with carbon fiber. However, it's not anything different than differences between woods. So I'd say if you heard two different woods and two different carbon fiber guitars, you wouldn't be able to tell which one is carbon and which one is wood. And then you would probably have a hard time distinguishing between the different woods and different carbons. And carbon fiber, you can design from the ground up, and there are many advantages of using carbon fiber in designing because you're not chopping down a tree to shape, and each piece of wood has imperfections. With carbon, it's exactly the same every time. You can control the thickness, you can control the density of material that you put in between carbon. So for example, our soundboard is carbon, foam, carbon, and that's called a composite sandwich panel. And that gives you durability and strength, but it also gives you resonance and the ability to flex and produce good sound. And you can control all the variables. And then once you nail it, it's exactly the same every time. And so there's really great stability and consistency across each unit. Whereas with wood, you can get great variation, even if the method of manufacturing is the same.
So in terms of the customer journey, with everything that you've discussed so far, and you know, you said this is kind of like a niche product. Can you share a little bit about who the customer is? Like, is it someone who's already a guitar player, but they're looking for one additional guitar, but which has like this specific quality, you know, they can travel with it?
Yeah.
You know, then you know they will go online and search for, like, you know, guitars for travel, or they would already have heard of carbon fiber guitars, so they would search and look for your business. Or
Yeah.
how does one get to know about your business, this particular product, and so what does that customer journey look like?
Right. So I'd say there are kind of two versions. There's the current snapshot and then the goal. The current snapshot is that most of our customers are already guitar players. It's not someone who wants to learn guitar and they don't know anything. Some customers are like that, but the majority are already guitar players. The majority already have another instrument. And if they're getting a travel guitar, then they most likely have a larger guitar. Majority will have a larger guitar, but they want a smaller one that's more portable. They could take with them everywhere. The customers that are buying our full-size guitar, which is a big guitar, those customers also want a guitar that can travel well, but they emphasize performance more. Our big guitar sounds much better than our travel because a small guitar will inherently it'll be very difficult to make it sound good because the volume of the body is so small. And when I say good compared to a big guitar. And then our ukulele. So the bigger guitar is less about travel and more incorporated into performance. And our big guitar can be someone's, I would say, only guitar, and it would be a very nice single guitar to have. Our ukulele is a very premium ukulele. It sounds incredible. It's one of the more expensive ukuleles out there. It is very travel friendly because it's virtually indestructible. But even if you're just looking for one of the best ukuleles out there and you want one of the best in the category, our ukulele is one of the best. And so that kind of deviates a little bit from travel, and it's just plainly one of the better in the market. And so each one's a little different, but how people find it, the travel guitar generally, durable guitar, best travel guitar, portable guitar, all those keywords will land with KLOS Guitars, and will be ranked, top 5 on a lot of those lists. That is the main driver still for our business. The travel guitar is our most popular guitar, but I think as our other models gain more popularity and there's more reviews about them, they'll become more popular as well. So yeah.
Cool. Can you share a little bit about your launch, the launch period itself? How did you launch? How did you get your first customers? And how did you know that there is some there's some legs to this idea?
Yeah. I would preface answering that with, it helps to be incredibly naive as a young entrepreneur, because you almost don't take no as an answer or as an option. And if you're so convinced that your idea is amazing in certain categories, and I would say guitar is one of these, you almost can create that reality, because guitar is one of those categories that's interesting. There are so many different brands that there could still be a new guitar brand that launches today that in 10 years could be very popular, just because the branding is good, the marketing is good. It's a very saturated market, and there are many, many brands. There's room for many brands. And just like apparel and fashion, there's no best shirt. People have a lot of different styles and whatever you like. So with that being said, at the very beginning, we knew that we had a cool product when we compared it to what else was out there from a style perspective. And as guitar players, we had some intuition there. I think it was our first launch when we launched, and we spent $1,000 on advertising, and halfway through the campaign is when we learned what advertising was. So we launched on Kickstarter, and we raised $32,000 for that first campaign, or $33,000. And yeah, we spent $1,000 on it. We got our first 70 customers that way. We targeted travel guitar, carbon fiber guitar, all the obvious search terms. And those 70 customers were our early adopters, and they were willing to pre-order. They were willing to wait 9 months for their guitar. And 70 to us at the time was huge. 70 people are going to play this guitar every day once they get it. Yeah. And they're willing to trust a team with no experience to build this product. And so that was a big validating moment for us. I would say it wasn't yet, I still had another job, the first year and the second year. And so it wasn't yet enough for me to drop everything and say, that 100%, I believe this idea is going to go off. But we launched 2 more models. We made an improved model of the first 1.0. We sold, I think, 160 or so on that second Kickstarter. And then we launched a third model that had a premium model included in the campaign and had electronics in the acoustic guitar. And we sold 500 in 1 month when we launched that one, our third Kickstarter. that's when I truly knew. That was 2 years in. That's when I quit my other job and went 100% full time. And that's when I knew that if you could do that in 1 month, and with how little experience we had, then you could, I think, build a company around this. And I think, although it's niche, I think it could be sustainable. And, it's turning out to be true.
Awesome. I mean, very curious to learn a little bit more on the product side. So it seems like, your brother created the first guitar with his mechanical engineering experience.
Yeah.
You put it on Kickstarter and then you created other versions. Did you
Yeah.
also get into building some of the electrical components and things like that? Or was it that once you got your 70 orders in the first Kickstarter, you found a manufacturer who can design and build this kind of thing? So can you share a little bit on how your product development process and where it is right now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting development over the years. So we made the first 2,000 model units ourselves in here near Salt Lake City in Utah, where we are now. And that was we learned so much doing that, setting up a manufacturing plant, setting up an assembly line, building all the molds ourselves, laying up the carbon fiber. The first 2 years were huge in learning how to make the product, what makes a good product, what makes a big impact on the customer and what doesn't make a big impact. Where is it worth putting a lot of time into? Where can you put less time into? And then eventually we had a supplier who made the carbon fiber parts for us. And that's what we do now. We receive the different carbon fiber parts and we start with the assembly. And that is, as an example, part of the question. The thing that customers care the most about is picking up an instrument that feels really good, it plays really well, every final touch is perfect. Whether we make that carbon fiber part initially before it's assembled, or if a supplier makes that doesn't impact the final user's experience much. And that's how we kind of prioritized what we make and what our suppliers make. But our product development history really evolves from the customer. And I find that to be really cool because, we made the first travel guitar. And then the reason that we launched an acoustic electric travel guitar is because so many of our customers, even though we had maybe at that point 250, 300 customers, so many of them were asking, can you make this but acoustic electric? And so that to us was the next step. Okay, let's make an acoustic electric. Once we did that, and on that campaign, we had a more premium version, we were shocked at how many people bought the more premium version because it was a little ironic. We were trying to be the affordable carbon fiber guitar, and we had this expensive model, and so many people were buying the expensive model. And so that was the first time where we were like, okay, we just graduated college, and so we're poor young adults, but not everyone is a poor young adult. And actually, a lot of people like buying expensive things because, there's a totally different value creation around having something that's nicer, more premium, longer lasting, better quality. And so then that was a big lesson in price point and quality. And so we designed a more premium version. We then designed full carbon models, so even more premium and even better quality. And that worked really well. Then people asked, can you make a ukulele? Can you make a big guitar? So that's pretty much how we product develop now. We wait. If you go to our website and you go to the coming soon section of our website, we have a very large list of instruments that are coming soon. And customers are able to click on whichever instrument that we don't make and sign up for us to make it. And we plan to make every instrument that there's enough demand for. And what I like about that strategy is one, it's automatically developing something that has a product market fit. We inherently won't make it unless there's enough of a product market fit. Two, we already have early adopters right when we launch it. And so there's almost no risk. And we also do a Kickstarter for each one. So there literally is no financial risk with the launch of a new instrument. And that way we're able to always stay true to listening to the market. Well, with this strategy, we find it impossible to make something that no one will buy, which I think is important to remember, because sometimes you could get misguided from the market or kind of detached from a product market fit by thinking that the market will want it, but then they don't. And so that's our current strategy.
And initially, were you and your brother doing everything with your own two hands, like using your own engineering knowledge and doing the research, or did you actually go out and get some help, or consult with people who had more experience? As you said, you both you and your brother were pretty much new to this.
Yeah.
Did you get any help, like in terms of the design and product development, or was that completely just you two trying to figure it out? And because that would be, I'm just trying to ask you, that would be pretty impressive, two people just coming up with all completely new products.
Yeah. My brother is a phenomenal engineer. He, since we were young, he's always been designing things and fixing things. And his first job was when he was 14, fixing bikes at a local bike shop. And, he would build devices that no one would really think to make at a young age. Like at 16, he built a paper shredder where you pulled a rope and razors would cut a piece of paper that you'd put in. This was a mechanical device. But I would say we both, engineers are good at learning things. And if you don't know something, then you have to find an expert and learn from them and then test it. Some things go well, some things go poorly. You test again, learn more from another expert, whether it's finding experts or YouTube or talking to a supplier, learning from them. So pretty much all of the product development happened in that way. When Ian encountered an engineering challenge, we found someone who was better at it, maybe in a different space, or we tested things. But yeah, the scientific method will take you very far as hypotheses and tests and taking notes and learning what went well, what went poorly, and just going from there. But yeah, it's part of the reason that we've grown slowly and organically is because we've done almost everything ourselves. And, it's the same way on the marketing and business side, especially in the early days when I didn't really know what I was doing. But I was good at finding people who did and just asking them a million questions and learning from them. And eventually I developed some sort of expertise that was enough to get to the next stage. And then at the next stage, there was always new things to learn. So I think that approach can take you quite far. Obviously, certain industries have more of a technical challenge than others. But Ian had the right amount of technical experience with carbon fiber to be able to learn. I think you do need to have a certain level of competence to be able to learn. If you have no experience with carbon fiber, you can talk to a carbon fiber expert and you won't learn anything because you don't have that language and that understanding.
At what point did you transition from Kickstarter to having your own website? I see that in terms of your sales channels, you have a website. I also see on your website, you have like a bunch of dealers who carry your products. Can you share a little bit about how you transitioned, from just doing, I'm assuming you were just doing business on Kickstarter and then you, at a certain point, you went completely.
Yeah. The transition was pretty fast for us. We did the first Kickstarter, took about a year to fulfill that. Then we launched our website and we sold, I think it was about double what we sold, or about the same amount that we sold on that first Kickstarter, but on our website. Then we did a second Kickstarter while we had the first product on our website, but the new product was on Kickstarter. And that's always been our approach. Basically, launch on Kickstarter, move it to the website, launch on Kickstarter, move it to the website. And so with time, that became a very efficient way to advertise and use Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter would generate sales, but then people interested in our other products that are readily available, they would buy it on our site. And so every Kickstarter we did, we also had a bump on our website. We made the switch. So we were direct to consumer for the first 5 years. And then we opened it up to sell our products to stores. But it wasn't too long after we started retail that COVID hit. And so our retail strategy was quickly crushed by the pandemic, and it laid dormant for about 1.5 years. And it wasn't really until kind of news started coming out that brick and mortar was actually doing quite well about 1.5 years into the pandemic, that we then decided to turn that channel back on. And now we have, the brick and mortar and direct consumer channel. And in my opinion, based on the data that we've seen and how the two work together, I think the best pairing is to do both e-commerce and work with retailers, because it's just two different sales channels and they both help each other a lot. And so that synergy, I think, will only continue to get better in the next decade.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that you mentioned at the beginning was, you were right out of college and you didn't really have a lot of business experience. I'm very curious to know, once you started getting some success, like at what point did you start scaling your team? Like at what point did you start making hiring, and what roles did you hire for first, and what does your team look like right now?
Yeah. So we hired builders right away. At first it was kind of the intern type employee. We hired interns from the college that Ian went to part-time. And initially we didn't even have enough money to pay people. And so what we paid people with was a guitar. So the initial employees, it was, I think 80 hours of work was equivalent to a guitar.
Okay.
And that was at first it was, a small team, build your own guitar and you get to keep it and own it. And then you're also working on other guitars alongside your guitar. And we quickly then moved to more, established hourly workers building the guitars. And manufacturing really was our biggest challenge the first 4 years, I would say. And the marketing team was always quite small until then. We generally had one videographer, marketer, kind of someone in that role. And it was always just one person. The first 3 years we had our first employee / co-founder. He had a videographer background. And so that was essential initially. And he was also good at learning marketing things. And so we worked closely together. And then
your co-founder?
Yeah, he became a co-founder after initially being a first employee.
So in order to do that, like, did he invest some money, or did you just say that he's bringing a lot of skills, so let's give him a certain?
Yeah, it was the latter. So over time, he brought a lot to the table, and so we gave him that title.
Okay.
And then after he left after 3 years, and then we always had one marketing person, and their main skill set was videography. And the reason for that was because one, that helped build the website. I was coding the website, and usually it was simple Wix and Shopify. but we were launching a lot of products on Kickstarter, and for that we needed a videographer. It wasn't until I think year 5 that we had more than one person on the marketing team. So it was really quite late, and we always had a manufacturing challenge, not a sales challenge. I think in 2021 was the first time that we had more inventory than I could sell. So it really took a long time to switch from a manufacturing challenge to a sales challenge. And now we try to balance that and have a fine line between that, because you never want so much inventory that you don't have an inventory problem, but now you have a storage problem and too many models and too many units. And so our manufacturing team kind of ebbs and flows, and we try to keep it tightly intertwined with our sales levels.
Now, initially, you did mention that your SEO does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of bringing the traffic to your website. Can you share a little bit about marketing, what is working, whether it's SEO or paid advertising or social media, what really brings new customers, and how do you keep those customers? Do you have customers who buy again and those kind of things? Can you share a little bit about your marketing?
Yeah. So now there's a much bigger paid advertising component, definitely. Yeah, I think as any brand grows, that becomes a part of it. I think, SEO and paid advertising go hand in hand. SEO and organic traction is almost the highway that you have to build, and that has to make sense. If someone searches carbon fiber guitar organically, they should be able to find us. If they can't, then that's a glaring red flag. And then you kind of pour gasoline on top of that, and you advertise for that audience, whether it's on social media or on search engines through search terms. So yeah, now we do both. We also try to sell on several different platforms, our own website, Amazon, other instrument related websites. In general, diversifying, stores, diversifying sales channels and driving traffic everywhere creates, a multiple touch point system where people are learning about the brand in different places, and that all helps all the platforms do well.
Are you selling mostly in North America, or is it international fulfillment also?
We're now mostly in North America, about 75%. Initially, we actually were 50-50 North America and outside of the US. And I think that's because there's a large international community on Kickstarter. But yeah, now it skews more US. Definitely the plan is to keep growing everywhere in as many countries as we can. But still majority US.
Are there challenges to growing in other countries? Like how would a customer in, let's say, Europe or Australia would buy this? They would just go to your website and place the order, and you basically ship that out? Or do you have your own fulfillment centers in those countries or distribution channels?
Yeah, I would say the complexity with doing international business just increases significantly. With everything, with every aspect, shipping's more expensive. Sometimes there's duty and tax that you have to follow. Sometimes there are different rules for product specifications that you need. So it definitely makes it more complicated, but not too complicated. It's definitely achievable. We, at the moment, for most countries, will ship the guitar if they buy it directly on our website. Some countries, we have inventory in Amazon in those countries. So Australia, for example, you can buy it on Amazon Australia, and we shipped to there, and then it ships to the customer from there. Amazon EU, we have some inventory there, but all those areas are, we want to improve in all those areas. We have a couple stores that are outside of the US, but not yet as many as we like. So it's still a work in progress, but it's definitely doable.
Cool. In terms of messaging, or in terms of, just attracting people to your website or product, I mean, I see one campaign that you've done is like, playing golf with your guitar, which I'm assuming is kind of like you're highlighting how durable your guitar is. On your
Right.
website, you have a lot of, it seems like, musicians who are playing your guitar, and that could be one strategy, like, really just the quality of music and functionality of the product.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you're trying like some sort of influencer marketing also, where you bring like more established musicians who are endorsing your product and things like that. Can you share a little bit about, in terms of your messaging, what are the different things you've tried, in terms of different value propositions of your product, and what has really stuck in the market? Like what really talks to consumers?
Yeah. We try a lot of different things, and I think, our product has several different aspects to it. It has several different feature benefits. For example, it's very durable. And so some ads we highlight durability, but it also sounds really good, and it's an instrument. So you have to show people so that they can hear how good it sounds. And so we have ads where people are just playing them. The durability, there are different ways to showcase durability. You could do kind of a scientific ad where you kind of show the data on how it's durable, or you can kind of go the humor route, which we tried with the golf video. Obviously you would never golf with your guitar, but it's kind of this funny, creative way to showcase durability by combining it with something you would never think of. And that kind of is a new spin on an old idea. So yeah, portability. Our guitars are very portable. You can fold them in half. And so sometimes we have an ad where the guitar is disassembled and goes into a suitcase. Yeah, there are a lot of, high quality and premium finish is another feature benefit. And so sometimes we'll have an ad where we show how they're built and people working on them, so they kind of feel the craftsmanship. And then a big one is kind of aspirational, but the benefits of all this is that you can take your instrument to a cool place and play music there. So a lot of our ads will be people playing in cool places. And that's kind of aspirational marketing, I think, in the sense that we want our customers to, from day one, think, okay, I now have this guitar that I can take anywhere. So let me take it on an adventure and test it to its limits. I'll be carefree with the instrument because the instrument's strong. And we kind of have this idea that, we'll worry about the instrument. That's our job. The musician and the customer, their job is to worry about the music and enjoying it. And so that's kind of the relationship that we want with our customers. But yeah, the advertising strategy is very wide, and we try to cover all the features of the product.
Cool. In every entrepreneur's journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned, failures. In your journey, can you think of like one big mistake or one big failure that really sticks out in your mind? So what did you learn from it as an entrepreneur, as a business, and what can other entrepreneurs learn from it?
Yeah, it's hard to just pick one. I mean, the first that comes to mind is supply chain. Once you start working with suppliers who make one of the components for you, it adds a whole other level of complexity to the business. So we had a big mistake. We had several supply chain mistakes. None of them were massive, but we've had mistakes where A whole batch of parts that come are not to spec. And so, we were waiting for months, and especially initially, actually, our first order of necks that we partnered with a supplier, we didn't go through the correct process of inspection, a checklist, pre-shipment items, and we received parts that were not correct, and so we had to start over. That I think was a big challenge, and I think many people making things will kind of attest to the difficulty of making things. And there's just a lot you have to keep in mind. You have to give good instructions. You have to have a good inspection checklist. Sometimes you have to hire an inspector. If it's in a different country, it adds another language component or a travel component. And so I think that was a big learning experience, and it's an ongoing experience. Even companies as big as Microsoft who are making their products, they'll have supply chain mistakes all the time, and they have many, many full-time employees just managing the supply chain and quality control and all that. It's a massive industry. So that was, I think, one of our earlier kind of burns and lessons learned.
Cool. I've heard those kind of horror stories in the past also. So now we're going to move on to our rapid fire segment. And in this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you have to answer them like maybe one or two words or a sentence or so. So the first one is one book recommendation for entrepreneurs, and why?
I would say Shoe Dog. And I think it's a great story of persevering through many challenges. And it's a good example of a now successful company, Nike, but debunking the myth that to make a big successful company is easy. It took over a decade before there was any real traction. And so I think that I really like that story because it kind of reminds entrepreneurs that it's really not easy for most people, and it keeps you rooted in that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most recommended books on the show for sure. An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about.
So for this one, I'd say Flux Marine. They make electric motors for boats. Sort of like not quite the Tesla for boats, but I think it's a very innovative idea in kind of the renewable space, and that's one of the sectors that I like the most. Kind of innovation and renewables.
Is it battery based or something else?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
A lot of people probably use this, but Slack, I think. We've integrated Slack so tightly into our system that now I couldn't imagine working without it.
Cool. A peer entrepreneur or business person whom you look up to, or someone who inspires you?
I'd say this changes for me quite often, just because there's so many successful people out there. But I think the most recent one that comes to mind is Hamdi Ulukaya, the founder of Chobani.
Okay.
I listened to his "How I Built This" podcast interview, and it's a phenomenal story that's really inspiring of how Chobani came to be. So I think that's currently the one that's at the forefront. Cool.
I mean, I'm surprised you didn't say Elon Musk, given that you're from engineering background and building products. But
yeah.
Final question: best business advice you ever received, or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
That one is tough. I think, sort of in line with my book choice, I think the thing that really helps me the most is, and I've heard this from so many different people, but starting a business is hard. It's a lot of work. And inherently, if it was easy, then someone would have already done it, or, you wouldn't be doing it. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep that in mind that, things will be hard, things will go wrong. But don't be discouraged. It's worth it because you're doing something you're passionate about, and remember why you're doing what you're doing, and keep a level head, and just keep working hard and solving problems and making solutions.
Awesome. And final question, how much time do you get now to play guitar yourself?
Less than I would like and less than you would think, for having hundreds of guitars. I think probably on average, I'm now playing about 1 to 3 hours a week, maybe.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Adam, those were all the questions that I had. Really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your very interesting business story. So thanks again for joining Trip Talk. And yeah, really, really appreciated your time.
Yeah, thank you.